It was a beautiful track in one of the most beautiful settings of any racetrack in America. I've toured most of the tracks in America, and there's not any that were any grander than the view of Mount Rainier.
Well, Longacres has always been a constant for me. From my earliest memories about racing, it's been Longacres. When we came to Longacres, it was the start of the year. We always came in a few weeks early, and we always left late summer in time to get back down to school and the like. My mind's eye has not yet been able to envision this area as something else besides Longacres.
Horses are being led into the stalls down here at the mile starting position below us, and now they're all in. Cherokee Scout was brought in, but he backed out again. The assistant starters are having just a little trouble with Cherokee Scout, but jockey Robinson is handling him nicely. Looks like it might be a go at any moment. And there they go. Mucilage is going to the front. Salsane is second on the outside. Risky Play is third, and Little Gallant.
Turning for home, it's Arthur B on the extreme outside by a neck. Old Punch is second by a head. Cold Face third, moving up between horses, and Shuffle Duck on the inside.
Sweet Gallant rolls up. It's Sweet Gallant and My Time Music. They are neck and neck. My Time Music and Sweet Gallant. It's My Time Music.
Tucked away in the northwest corner of America, isolated from the national horse racing circuit, it seemed improbable that such a racecourse would produce some of the greatest jockeys, horsemen, and thoroughbreds the sport has ever seen. From its miraculous construction in 1933, Longacres had weathered the Great Depression, disastrous floods, and World War II. It withstood the onslaught of moral opposition, political assaults, and market competition. But the forces of change were irresistible, and in 1992 it all came to a somber end. The young city the track grew up in had outgrown the track.
Longacres is a Northwest institution. In one sense, it's just a place where horses race and people get to bet on those races, but it's really meant much more to the history of Seattle and the whole Seattle area than that.
You know, it's been going a long time. And this track here is on the level with all the major tracks. And it's going to be hard on the horsemen. It's just a shame that they have to give up racing.
Joe Gottstein is the subject of considerable mythology around the racetrack. He's given credit for Olympian powers and is judged accordingly. He is cursed for a muddy track, a fast track, and even when a horse falls dead at the head of the stretch.
It all began as the dream of one man. He was called the Laird of Longacres, the Aga Khan of the Green River Valley. Everyone who knew him called him Joe. A sportsman and a capitalist, Joe Gottstein made a fortune in real estate in the 1920s, buying and selling buildings. Local newspapers called him one of the most influential men in Seattle's modern history. During the Great Depression, he gambled a fortune on his passion for horse racing, and in 28 days, he turned a farm pasture into an elegant racetrack. Over the course of 60 years, his gamble turned into a giant industry. But the dream that would become Longacres was deeply rooted in a long tradition of Northwest horse racing. From the time it was introduced to the New World by Spanish explorers, the horse transformed the lives of the earliest Americans. For the Indians of the Northwest, the horse was a source of wealth and pride. At tribal gatherings, arguments over whose horse was fastest would prompt races on the open fields. By the 1850s, horse racing became an Indian passion. Just as the horse had revolutionized the West, the iron horse industrialized it. Railroads brought more white settlers to the Pacific and connected the towns of the sprawling Washington Territory. Horse owners were now able to take their fastest mounts to distant tracks, and a racing circuit soon developed. One of the season's highlights was the meet held in the town of Seattle.
The Intelligencer, September 23, 1872. The fall meeting of the Seattle Jockey Club promises to be the most numerously attended and successful one of its appointments which has ever been held in the territory. 4 of the fastest thoroughbreds in this section of the country are here now in constant training.
By 1889, Northwest racing reached a peak. A local horse named Spokane won his first race, the 15th running of the Kentucky Derby. In the nation's capital, a senator was so impressed he rose to address the Congress.
I wish to cast my vote in favor of admitting Washington to the Union. The state that bred and raised Spokane, greatest of all thoroughbred racehorses, must be a community worthy of a star in our flag.
That November, Washington became the 42nd state. '89 was also the year of Seattle's Great Fire, an inferno that nearly leveled the entire business district. From out of the ashes of a frontier town, a new city emerged, built on a grander scale in brick and stone.
Great hordes of fortune seekers now descend upon this port town, bringing immense prosperity to all its merchants. With an eye on the sophisticated cities of the East, local boosters claim Seattle will soon be counted among the great cities of America.
A city fated for such greatness needed better amenities, certainly a better racetrack. Throughout his life, Aaron T. Vandeventer witnessed the demise of several Northwest racetracks, frequently the victim of moralists and missionaries who condemned them as the devil's playground. A former state senator and horse breeder, Vandeventer used his connections to build a glamorous racetrack, one he thought would become a permanent fixture in the Northwest.
The Post-Intelligencer, 1902. The addition of Seattle to the racing circuit means a vast deal for the city. It is an advertisement the town has been lacking ever since it attained the dignity of a metropolis.
It was called the Meadows, and its opening on August 18, 1902, created a stir throughout the city. Downtown streetcars heading to the track filled to capacity. Cattle cars were converted for passenger use to handle the overflow. By early afternoon, 3,000 people filled the grandstand and clubhouse to witness the thunder and grace of thoroughbred racing. The Seattle Times declared that a new era in professional horse racing had begun.
The clubhouse with veranda and sward offers a vantage where beauty, wealth, and culture can view the test of equine speed. Ladies sit comfortably in the stylish parlor while the gentlemen stoke their pipes in the dark paneled bar.
The Meadows quickly became an elegant destination for Seattle's most affluent, attracting bankers, politicians, and businessmen. One clubhouse member and horse owner was Meyer Gottstein, the largest whiskey wholesaler in the Pacific Northwest. 20 years earlier, Meyer had arrived in America, a poor Jewish immigrant from Poland. He settled in Seattle and soon married Rosa Wolf. On July 14, 1891, she gave birth to their only son, Joseph Gottstein. While the young boy grew up, the family spent their summers watching their horses race at the Meadows, where his father had become a shareholder. On his 8th birthday, Joseph was given a wonderful gift, a thoroughbred horse named Prince Liège. For the boy, the attachment was immediate and would last a lifetime. Son, his father told him, there are plenty of sports in this world, but damned few sportsmen. While horse racing flourished at the Meadows, gambling reform on the East Coast reduced the number of racetracks from 314 to 25. Many of the nation's leading turfmen headed west to the Meadows, which had earned the reputation as the second fastest track in the country. Crowds grew to 12,000, and the racing season expanded from 12 days to 73. During the off-season, promoters arranged other curious spectacles at the Meadows. Thousands packed the grandstand to witness daredevil Charles Hamilton at his flying machine, high above the infield in Seattle's first exhibition of flight. The day also marked Seattle's first exhibition of a plane crash. In the audience that day, a young man named William Boeing watched with rapt attention. Years later, he would purchase a red barn on that same site and build his first airplane. By 1908, over 150 bookmakers were operating independently at the track. Rumors of corruption spread, and despite Van Deventer's efforts, the wave of reform that swept the East now hit the West.
Horse wagering is one of the most insidious and dangerous evils that preys upon the weakness of man. There is no more fruitful source of such crimes as forgery and embezzlement than racetrack gambling. Governor Albert Meade.
Van Deventer was hit hard by the criticism. He had invested everything in the track, purchased a stable of horses, and built his new home on its grounds. On the last day of the 1907 season, Van Deventer was killed when his automobile was struck by an oncoming streetcar. The Meadows was hardly the sink of corruption its critics claimed. But with horse racing's strongest supporter gone, Seattle's representative, Ole Hansen, nicknamed Holy Ole, launched his attack in the state's capital.
Regrettably, women, innocent by nature, are the most enthusiastic and persistent gamblers and naturally need protection. I am going to Olympia to protect the public.
On a rainy day in January 1909, Hansen's anti-racing bill passed unanimously. Van Deventer's dream to give professional horse racing a permanent home had lasted only 7 seasons. The future of the sport in the Northwest would remain in doubt for 25 years.
Here's the good old Brown, she's the jolliest place in town. Drink it down, drink it down, drink it down, down, down.
Memories of summers spent at the Meadows remained fixed in the mind of Joseph Gottstein, now enrolled at Brown University in Rhode Island. Between semesters, and perhaps between classes, Joe handicapped thoroughbreds at nearby racetracks. The tradition and style of Saratoga and Belmont delighted him. On one occasion, his parents sent him money for a ticket to Europe, where they were traveling. Not wanting to go alone, he and a classmate went to the track and put it all on the nose of a 25-to-1 long shot. The horse won by a neck, and the two traveled to Europe in style.
All life is a gamble. Show me a man who doesn't like to gamble, and I'll show you a man I wouldn't give 10 cents for. Everybody worth anything takes a chance in life. Joe Gottstein.
While traveling through Europe, the Gottstein family visited Longchamp Racecourse outside Paris. It was without question the most beautiful track in the world, and hosted the Grand Prix de Paris, the world's richest race. Joe was enchanted by the magnificent setting, as well as the style Europeans brought to the sport. In 1914, Joe's years at Brown were cut short by the death of his mother, and he returned to Seattle to work in his father's liquor business. Within a year, Washington's prohibition laws forced the Gottsteins to reinvest. Vaudeville had hit its stride, and talk was of a new form of entertainment. It was called the motion picture, an invention created by accident while proving a bet on a racehorse. The Gottsteins decided to build a movie theater, and at age 23, Joe was put in charge of its $600,000 construction. To design the theater, he hired architect Benjamin Marcus Pratica, a Scottish immigrant. Pratica, who was the same age as Gottstein, had already gained a reputation for his vaudeville theaters in Seattle, San Francisco, and Oakland. Pratica was given the weekend to design the theater. Monday morning, he presented his plans. Two years later, on the corner of 5th and Pike, the Coliseum Theatre opened in spectacular fashion. London's Royal Institute of Architects called it the first of the deluxe picture palaces. The Gottstein's Coliseum Theatre transformed the movie-going experience from a mere novelty into a glamorous event. The motion picture business intrigued Joe, but the flavor and gamble of horse racing still lingered in his mind. A year after the Coliseum opened, Meyer Gottstein died. Left on his own, Joe and his close friend William Idris became real estate partners, and over the course of the next 15 years, reshaped the city's skyline.
Seattle Post-Intelligencer, 1928. They have put together a series of the most spectacular realty transactions in Seattle's recent history. They have adventured where more cautious or conservative men have hesitated. Results have proved their judgment of Seattle values is almost uncanny in its accuracy. Only a few people in the city know of their operations. They are not associated in any firm, rather a case of Joe and Bill getting together to cut another melon.
Why, this town just can't keep from going ahead, can it? Too many cities wait for outside capital to come in and clean up the gravy. We've got confidence in Seattle's future, and there isn't anything else to it except to buy 'em and sell 'em.
It has been suggested, maybe not in jest, that Gottstein owned half of downtown Seattle and had his eye on the rest.
At the peak of his powers, Joe Gottstein seemed to have most of what a man could want. What he wanted most was a racetrack.